everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers are sitting around drinking tasty beverages and talking about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There will be rants and raves and opinions that do not degree but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Your Sherpa through this adventure is me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 149. Interview with Madeleine Holly Rosing, the writer, creator, and hoster of Boston Metaphysical Society. Welcome, Madeleine.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Jeannie.
Oh, I am so delighted. I have been a fan of yours since I think it was 2010 or 2011 that there was SteamCom up in Seattle, and I bought the first graphic novel.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. Thank you.
So just to say, I've had a decade of appreciating you, and it so delights me that we ran into each other again at Clockwork Alchemy recently, 2022 here in San Jose. And I said, I want to talk to you. We've got to interview you.
Well, I'm so glad you stopped by the table. That was a lot of fun, and I'm thrilled to be on the show.
Tell a bit about yourself. A lot of people do things and dabble here and there. Now, you have been dedicated to the business of writing this, running this, and many other things besides. You've been a screenwriter. You've worked in many different parts of the field. How did you get started? What are your mythic origins?
My mythic origins. I got into comics almost by accident. I had originally written Boston Metaphysical Society as a TV pilot while I was at UCLA Film School. And while I was there, it was suggested that I turn it into a graphic novel to use it as marketing material to then go back to TV and film. As you can see, there's a lot of, particularly Netflix and all over, a lot of material out there started off as graphic novels.
I'm also fairly convinced the Frankenstein Chronicles stole you entirely.
But a funny thing happened during this journey, and I discovered I really like writing comics, and I love the indie comic creator community, and I pretty much found a home. So I worked at, we turned Boston Metaphysical, the TV pilot, into a 6-issue miniseries, and you have to, I always finish what I start. So
that is a beautiful, beautiful habit. I just want to interject that.
So I said, I have to finish this. And, when I first started, I never expected to be doing more, but it just started to grow. And, I found my people with the steampunk community, like at Clockwork Alchemy and Gaslight Expo. And, I've been to TeslaCon and Wild, the West Steampunk Convention, and also the comics community. So yeah, I just ended up staying, and I really love this world, and it's a very big world. It's a very rich world. So while we were in production for the original 6-issue miniseries, I started writing short stories and novellas to build canon,
right,
and to start fleshing out the world itself.
I can see in so many ways how, because graphic novels are very driven by conversation, I can see how they're like screenplays. How do you feel that the novellas fit into this world similarly? I mean, they're almost like character sketches with action, or how do you look at them?
I look at them as companion pieces to the graphic novels. And in fact, they enrich the world. Because prose allows me to do certain things that I can't do with a graphic novel, mainly because of budget. It's very expensive to produce a comic, and it's a lot cheaper to do prose.
I can see that.
And since it's a different medium, you can spend more time with the written word and dig even deeper into it. It's just, a lot of it has to do with, like I said, budget, and also cross-marketing, quite frankly. I've brought a lot of people in who normally would just read prose and go like, I'm not adverse to graphic novels, but I've just never really gotten into it. And then they start reading the graphic novels, and then they become a fan of both.
Right.
So and then it's gone the other way as well, where people start with the graphic novel and then move over to the prose.
Which is more fun for you?
I think it depends on what mood I'm in.
That makes sense.
To me, it's fun to write, period. Most of the time. Sometimes it's not so fun, but you have to understand that a comic script, a graphic novel script, is not just a story, but it's a communication document to your artist and to your colorist and to your letterer. So you're not only, the director, you're also the producer.
Right.
And that's not something you do with prose. It's just you and, your editor.
I can see that. And plus, when you were talking about expensive, I suppose that's running between like 4 to 6 drawings, paintings per page. And that's a human being's time. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, panels, I normally don't go beyond, a six panel page,
Right.
but yeah, no, it does take art. Every artist is different. Some are slow, some can produce very quickly. And yeah, it falls under the category of it depends.
Right. Right. But yours has won awards. For instance, the Geeky Awards, I think you were
And
nominated for, plus
yeah,
Airship Awards. Yep.
correct. Yes.
So
So yeah.
you've touched a lot of people. It's not just me. There's awards backing it up there.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and a fan reminded me not too long ago, just a couple weeks ago. He says, "Oh, do you know this? It's BMS, for short. It's your 10th anniversary." And I went like, "It is?
It is.
It
It is
is.
your 10th anniversary.
It is. It's a 2022 as our 10th anniversary, even though it's actually been around longer than that.
Yeah.
But yes, the comic it's been 10 years when we first launched the first issues online. Yeah.
Has it been so successful you've been able to make a living doing it? Is that a dirty question?
No, it's not a dirty question. No, not enough to make a living, but we have been self-sustaining for quite a number of years.
Paying for
Um,
itself is a big thing.
yeah, and it is, particularly as an independent comic. I think we actually pulled in our first real profit, last year,
Sweet.
which was really nice and keeps the feds happy.
That's true. And your latest Kickstarter, The Book of Demons, tell us a little bit about. I mean, when it started out, I mean, for those that remember, it's Samuel Hunter, Caitlin O'Sullivan, Granville Woods. Is it still those three together?
Yeah, actually, to correct you here, the current Kickstarter is for volume 2.
Volume
Uh,
two.
yes,
Okay.
it's for volume 2, and that collects all 4 of the sequels, which includes the Scourge of the Mechanical Men, the Spirit of Rebellion, Ghosts and Demons, and the Book of Demons.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
plus a bonus 10-page story with art by Roberta Ingranata, who's currently doing Doctor Who.
Ooh. So what do you use when you're doing this? I mean, we've had talked to a lot of people. Do you notebook? Do you do it online? Do you have specific, where do you start when you're storyboarding your ideas and writing your story?
I don't actually do, I don't storyboard. I write a script.
Okay.
And it looks very similar. There's many ways to write a comic script, but it looks somewhat similar to a TV, or a film script, depending on the writer. You just have to make sure everything is very clear for your artist and your colorist.
Right. Does it, you use the equivalent of slug lines then?
Sometimes I do, particularly if I'm starting a new scene and or if I'm using a new artist. I mean, Gwen and I worked together for 4 years. So after a certain amount of time, we had a certain, shorthand to speak to each other, which it was kind of funny because there would be panels where we'd have a ghost and I'd say, and she'd forget to make it look like a ghost. And I would just say like, oh, don't forget the glowy stuff. And she'd know exactly what I was talking about. And so, over time you do develop a shorthand with your artist, but you have to work up to that. So yes, sometimes I'll use slug lines, describe, what is in that particular panel. I capitalize who has to be in the panel, and if certain objects have to be in the panel, that will be capitalized so the artist knows these things must be in the panel
Right.
in order to drive the story forward and evolve character. But I do more of a traditional, I just sit down and do a beat sheet. I outline things out.
Fascinating. So when do you pick your artists or have they come to you so far?
I've picked my artists. For Emily, for the first original 6 issues, I probably spent almost a year looking for an artist and had a couple people on board. And then I met Emily through a mutual friend and hired her to do a couple audition pages, and she knocked it out of the park. So bless her heart, she stayed, I put her under contract and she stayed with me for 5 years at least to get the 6 issues done.
Right.
And then Emily moved on to bigger and better, as they always do. And I put the word out that I was looking for a new artist. And another friend of mine said, have you seen, Gwen Tavares's work? I said, no. And so he says, you should check her out. And I looked up her portfolio online. And in the meantime, he had contacted her and then she emailed me. And then we started the conversation and went from there. So, both my artists came to me through mutual friends.
Well, I love that you said steampunk in America. So often it's London by gaslight and all places in Britain. I do love that you chose, and especially when I first read it and you picked up and you had between Tesla and Houdini, because Houdini was famous for going around wanting to talk to the spirit of his mother, but mostly unveiling charlatans. And I'm like, This is so perfect that he's in here. So I got to, you had me geeking out from like the very first episode 1.
Well, that's great. It was fun to bring historical figures into the mix, as well as Granville T. Woods, who's part of the team. He's the African American gentleman who is part of the original team. For those of your audience who don't know the story, it's about an ex-Pinkerton detective, a spirit photographer, and a genius scientist who battles supernatural forces in late 1800s Boston. The primary team was Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville. In Spirit of Rebellion, which was our second sequel, I bring in another character named Alma Bryant, who is an amateur scientist, and she is now pretty much a regular part of the team.
I have to throw in a geeky bit of trivia here. Did you know that the term scientist was invented in the mid-1800s because of Mary Somerville? Before that had been natural philosopher or men of scientist, but suddenly there was a chick and they had to come up with a new word.
Well, that's a great piece of trivia.
I know, that's my geeky trivia bit that I kept thinking of when I was reading it. So. But it wasn't, you don't pussyfoot around it. You do talk a little bit about the racism of the time, the sexism of the time, the classism of the time.
Yes.
And yet it doesn't get in the way of your story. And I like that.
Yeah, it's one thing I never like to be lectured to in stories, and I can't imagine anybody else does either. But these characters live in a very rigid social structure. And all 4 of them are pressing up against it. And so for me, that provides a nice organic conflict for all of them.
Yeah.
And Samuel, then, obviously he is the more privileged white male, but he himself is an outlier in having been married to a woman of a great house. She's since, died, but yet he's from the middle class. So he doesn't really belong quite anywhere either. So he's created this space for other outliers, and like Caitlin and Alma and Granville, in which to exist and to flourish, even though they all come from very, very different backgrounds.
And I think it's that very openness that does it. It's not clear at first. It's unveiled. We know his wife is dead, for instance. Yeah. Anybody can go out to your website, which is bostonmetaphysicalsociety.com, and you can read the first couple episodes right there online. So cool. Yes. And you all immediately should rush out and do it. But I like that you bring it in later, how, the different important. It's not just all the information in your face. So there are plot lines and little, you don't shove it. You kind of let it all flow out naturally. And that's an organically beautiful thing. We've talked about how do you develop plots and arcs before. So when you sit down saying, I have a story arc, how do you think about it? Do you flesh it out? Do you outline it? What's your method?
Oh, I outline. I outline and do essentially a beat sheet, which is something I learned in screenwriting. So
We have had a screenwriter before, but nobody has described it. So would you pause for a moment and unveil a beat sheet for them?
A beat sheet is where you essentially, you can do it either with numbers or bullet points, but you're going through every scene and just in your own shorthand. It doesn't have to be legible to anybody else but yourself. Who is in that scene? What is the point of the scene? Any other notes? If you think of a little bit of dialogue, you can just note it there, so you can see how the story is progressing. And for me, since comics is very episodic, it's almost ingrained with me that I know when, okay, this has to be the end of the issue, because here, this is the cliffhanger and this is the page where it has to end into the next one.
Is there a formula? Somebody must die by panel number 16 or?
No. I mean, you do need something to happen within the first 5 pages,
Right.
or else people's eyes tend to roll in the back of their heads. A lot of people say no, it has to be on page 1. I am more of a slow burn type of writer, and I certainly don't mind reading others at a slow burn as long as there's a good payoff.
Right. Right. It doesn't always have to start with a James Bond, something blows up. It could start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can start a little more, sure, you got to see some conflict, you got to see, but it doesn't have to be immediately, the world is going to end.
Is that similar to how you view, like you did a prequel? Is it novella or novel?
It's a
Of
novel. It's called A Storm of Secrets, and it actually won a silver medal at the Feathered Quill Book Awards in 2019. I No one was more surprised than me.
did you enter it?
Yes. I entered it just like, oh, I'll go enter this. This seems like fun.
That's got to be part of the battle.
Yeah, and it also won overall top pick, which also surprised me, but uh, but in a good way, obviously.
Yeah.
And but yes, that is a prequel to the original 6-issue miniseries, and in particular, that is Elizabeth Hunter's story. It's Samuel's wife.
Samuel's wife, the one who passed on. So we kind of know that it's not going to end well for her, but
yeah. I when people are new to the world and I often, when I'm at cons and someone's new and they're partial to prose and partial to graphic novel, I always recommend, well, get the first volume and get the novel, because that's going to provide all the foundation of the entire world. But I also recommend reading the graphic novel first, so I've had people get really upset.
I could see it's like,
Yeah.
it can be hard if you just walk in the middle and somebody's got Babylon 5 playing to just jump in the middle. But they stopped and they did that episode in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which made it so much easier for me to say, yes, I think I would like to binge watch this whole thing, because somebody went back and explained it a little bit, kind of unraveled a little bit. This is how we got to this point. This is how we let things get so far.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to do. And yeah, I just really wanted to tell her side of everything. And you got to meet, and in A Storm of Secrets, that's pre-Caitlin, it's pre-Granville.
Right.
You get to meet Caitlin's father, who doesn't last long in the comic.
Well.
Sorry, I kill all my characters.
You know, we're all born to die sooner or later.
Yeah.
When you put it into a podcast, you did a podcast called The Ghost Ship. Is it related or is it a piece or tell us about
It
that?
is an audio drama. It is like a classic radio play with full cast, special effects, original music, and the ghost ship kind of lands. An original story that lands kind of somewhere in between issues 1 through 6.
Okay.
And because only Samuel, Caitlin, and Granville are in it, and um it's pre Alma and all the sequels. I mainly did that because once again, budget, because I did pay my actors. So I was trying to, we had 12 actors on the audio drama.
Well, from your lips to Disney's ear, come on, people, pay your people.
Yeah. Granted, I mean, we were non-union and extremely low budget, but they did get paid. And
Excellent.
they were absolutely wonderful. I had a great production team, Eddie Louise and Chip Michael, who
Sage and Savant, we know them well.
yes. And Eddie had been on me. She goes, you have to turn this into audio drama. You have to. And I said, well, okay, but only if you guys come on board. And when the pandemic happened, I was fortunate enough to get a small business grant through the state of California. So I said, okay, this is going to be enough to pay the actors and pay my script editor, which ended up, being Eddie Louise. And let's pivot the business a little bit because we don't know how far this pandemic is going to last. I just had no idea. So we went full bore and got it done. I produced it. Chip did an amazing job. He directed it, and I actually wanted to direct it, but it became pretty clear that I did not have the skill sets yet to do such a thing. So I shadowed him, and I've learned a lot, and possibly in the future I will, but he just did a tremendous job.
No, now I kind of want to get the two of you together to talk about how to direct.
Yeah, you should definitely talk to him. He communicates with actors so well, and does just a great job with them. It was really eye-opening to me to listen, and I've learned a lot from him.
Now, you've also written a nonfiction book, the Kickstarter for the Independent Creator.
That's correct. Yes.
I love that because this can be a beginning of where do people start if I want to do things, but I have no money, but I have big dreams. Tell us a little bit about what's in the book and why they should buy it.
Kickstarter for the Independent Creator. I think I had done about 4 or 5 Kickstarters by then, and I was seeing a lot of fabulous projects doing the crash and burn. And I realized as I was watching these projects that the creators just did not know how to prepare to run a Kickstarter. So I sat down and hammered out, I kind of treat it as a field guide. It includes, how to find potential backers, a pre-launch strategy, campaign strategy, fulfillment, how to take care of yourself. There's some case studies in there and graphs and other resources. I tell people who buy it, read it through first and then read it again and make notes of what's particular for your particular, project.
Right.
Because everyone's going to start at a different point in their lives and in their careers. And it's helped a lot of people.
I can only imagine it. When we were doing it, I work with a Double Critical Gaming Company. I think we were their Adventures in Oz is their second or third Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. It was wildly successful, but there's many pieces that just plotting out in advance would have made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm all about pre-planning. It just makes your life so much easier. And I mean, the Kickstarter I'm running now is number 12, I think.
And I see that you've at least already made your first set of goals there, or blown them away, as it were.
Yes, we are going to our last and 7th stretch goal, and we have about 8 days to go.
Sweet. Well, everybody out there listening, it hopefully will have a chance to go look at it, get excited about. You can read some of Boston Metaphysical, like I said. You get it on advanced on her website. There's your taste, get addicted. You're dying to know what's happened. We can hook you up.
That's true. You can go to the website.
What advice would you give a young person who said, I really want to do graphic novels? What do you wish that you could go back and tell yourself when you were first starting?
Go read some good ones right off the bat. If you're a writer, read. And like any other writing, write. A couple things. Start with small projects. Don't do what I do and start with a 6-issue miniseries.
I don't know. That's optimism. I mean,
yeah, I it isn't until later that I realized how kind of idiotic that was. But like I said, we got it done. But yeah, I would start with something smaller. And I'd also strongly suggest learning to do some basic graphic design yourself. And that's not for, unless you're an artist, that's something else. But that's not so you can do the art, but that's so you can put together graphics for promotion.
Right. Marketing and promotion, I think, is something that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody needs a little bit more of, huh?
Yes. Nobody likes it. I don't like it. And I used to be a marketing director. So yeah.
There you are now. What are you working on now what are you doing after the Kickstarter? Or is there any after the Kickstarter in your head yet?
Oh yeah. I've got probably the next 2 years mapped out. Well, first I'm taking a brief vacation. And then I was hired to write a story for Lady Mechanica.
Nice.
So I'm going to be working on that, and it'll be a thrill to work with Marcia and Joe and Beth Sotelo, who I think is still going to be doing the coloring. And I already have outlined out the next Boston Metaphysical series. I'm moving away from one shots, and I'm going to go back to do a 4-issue miniseries, and that's already outlined out, and I have a draft of the first issue done and working on the second issue. And then I want to go back to some prose work that I've been doing.
That sounds exciting. Let's see. So we covered advice, we covered tools. Any other final words you want to give everybody out there on the Boston Metaphysical Society or your fantastic self?
Hey, if you love steampunk, supernatural, mysteries, then I think Boston Metaphysical Society is probably for you. Come check out our Kickstarter for Volume 2, but don't worry, Volume 1 will be available as well in both digital and print editions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Madeleine. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
We will put links to her stories, the Kickstarters, and all the exciting stuff with Boston Metaphysical Society and mentioned on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineers and backup web spiders are Dave Welsh and John Schmidt. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Langberg. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Design, Bean Scene Coffee, your favorite coffee house, and Arm Street. And hey, thanks for listening.